The recent evolution of downtown Tucson, like many up-and-coming areas, is attracting lucrative residents and booming businesses for a city in desperate need of economic stimulation. But urbanization pushes out long-time inhabitants and changes the racial distribution of once inexpensive areas in a process known as gentrification. Tucson News Now reported that between 2008 and 2013, 150 new businesses opened in downtown alone. 34 were restaurants, 27 were retail outlets, and others included apartment complexes and office spaces. In March of 2010, the Downtown Tucson Partnership launched Revitalizing Downtown Tucson, Building a New Pueblo. In the official report, they described this project as an urban renaissance, which included renovations to facade, building a new apartment complex, courthouse, and fire department, transportation initiatives, and significant private sector investments. As is usual of an urban renaissance, the price of living increased. In 1990, the median monthly rent in downtown Tucson was $247. In 2000, it was $419, and in 2012, it rose to $664. The median value of homes in downtown increased as well. Accounting for inflation, since 1990, the median value of homes has increased by 145%. Nationally, the median value of homes has only increased by about 22% from 1990 to 2012, according to data from the U.S. Census Bureau. As the spaces and prices in downtown Tucson changed, so did the racial distribution. In 1990, more than half of downtown Tucson residents, 58.2%, identified as Hispanic, and only 48.7% identified as white. By 2012, the Hispanic identifying population decreased by almost 30%, while the white identifying population increased by more than 40%, and Hispanics ceased to be the majority according to the U.S. Census Bureau. The history of the Tucson Convention Center may be repeating itself as poorer minority families are being forced to leave downtown. The Convention Center was constructed in 1971 on top of one of Tucson's oldest neighborhoods, the Barrio. When the Barrio was destroyed, its mostly Mexican-American population was displaced to make room for entertainment and commerce. In order to better understand the issues of urbanization and gentrification, a Tucson historian, businessman, and new resident will describe their perspectives and experiences with the ever-changing downtown Tucson.
Tucson, like all cities, they have sort of an infancy in how they get on the map. And Tucson got on the map pretty early because, first of all, from a water source standpoint, we had a river, and I use that sort of in a modest term because it was a surface flow of water called the Santa Cruz, and it actually flowed to the north, as you can see on this map here. So when Father Kino was a missionary out here in the 1690s, was coming through this area, he visited with the native people that were living along the Santa Cruz, and he asked them, "What do you call this place?" And they said, "Struxen," which translates roughly as place at the foot of a dark mountain and near a spring. And so Struxen becomes Tucson, becomes Tucson. And this map also shows you where it says original walled city, and that was where we had a Spanish fort established in 1775 and was there until almost 1854. But this would give you an idea of why this place became more significant. Now, when Tucson, and again, I like maps a lot, and I think it gives you get oriented to the geography because humans are always impacted by the geography. Source of water, a reason to stop, ability to grow crops along the Santa Cruz. And here's a simplified map of Tucson in 1870. And now it gets laid out a little bit more formally. So this would be the northern part of Tucson. This would be Church Square. This was part of Mexico. In fact, the evolution of it, Native American, part of Spain, part of Mexico. And then 1854 with the Gadsden Purchase, it would become, this whole area would become a territory of the United States. But the Mexican community would build Sonoran row houses, built out of regional materials. They would build mud adobe blocks. Again, it was a very straightforward process to building sun-dried adobe blocks. And the houses would be right up against the street with courtyards in the back. And they would line the different streets, the Mexican traditions. And so this would be all the part of the Mexican community, but there was always an overlap. And then this would probably be a little bit more Anglo to the north as other people, Europeans, would come in after 1880 especially. This is an Arizona highways from February 1958, and it's one of the few color photographs of the area, but almost everything at the bottom half of this photograph is now gone because of urban renewal. But what was, and again, Tucson even today has always been a melting pot of different cultures. So as the Anglos came in, they brought other traditions and ways of building food sources and that. But the Mexican community certainly enjoyed all those new ideas, and I like to think that a lot of Anglos enjoyed the food, the music, and the traditions. So things got along quite well, but then like any kind of situation, one group starting to become more prominent, getting more elected in a public office, more economic situations, and things would be changed. So there's always been a political tension, and probably still is even today, between different groups. But this was the oldest part of Tucson. There's still some areas in downtown that are actually historic districts today. This area almost off the map is the El Presidio Historic District, and just south of here is another historic district called Barrio Histórico. And those really are the remaining elements of the original town site. What happened by the 1940s, after World War II, there was a lot of growth and development in Tucson, realizing that the city of Tucson and within the city limits was probably 50,000 in 1950 and grew to 200,000 in 10 years. So tremendous amount of development, tremendous amount of suburban development. So this old area, and lots of it was really declining physically, didn't mean that it couldn't be brought back, but this became an area prominent for saying, well, why don't we just tear that down and we'll build something new, and it'll be economic development and all these other things. But a lot of people and ways of life would be really impinged on and then eventually almost vanished. So they became a struggle, and we started looking at these early traditions and the early housing style as being obsolete. So it would end up that they would pick almost about 80 acres to be demolished of the urban renewal project. I think there was a real struggle going on between realizing we would lose a tremendous amount of our history versus where are we going to put some new additions to downtown. So I think that was part of it. But the struggle really was that, and typically one group, all you have to do is look at an election, for public election for office. We tend to portray the extremes. We don't ever portray what the situation is. All the endorsements and a lot of the publicity for urban renewal always called everything a slump. But if you looked a little closer, the publicity that went out, it showed you the houses that were most decrepit and things that were really falling apart. It didn't show you all the fine, beautiful structures, all the businesses that would be lost. You realize urban renewal took lots of functioning businesses that had the tax rolls and all these things, but part of it, and it's hard to say, a lot of it was racially motivated. We don't want anything that looks like Mexico anymore. Like El Charro restaurant, the Plaza Theater, all these great things that were great traditions of Spanish speaking, but for everybody, they all had to be vacated from that area.
My name is Todd Hanley. I've been the general manager of the Historic Hotel Congress coming up on 11 years, actually December 31st. I am a part of what is a family-owned business through my marriage to the oldest daughter. I've been in Arizona for 13 years. This is my first crack at the hospitality industry, so I've survived 11 years. I think I'm probably going to be able to survive the next 15 to 20. The Hotel Congress was built in 1919. It was built to be basically a place for folks to rest after they got off the train, which is directly across the street, that was built in the early 1900s. The Hotel Congress used to be three floors, with 80 plus hotel rooms. The tap room is arguably the oldest operating liquor license in the state of Arizona, and then the history of arts and entertainment is kind of a fabric of the hotel. The main changes to the downtown would be when the streetcar construction ended. That pretty much freed up guests to come in and out of downtown Tucson without as much obstruction as they had to deal with for the past 7 to 8 years. And so for me personally, that was a big change to the ability for the customer to feel comfortable coming downtown. Throughout that, obviously, long extended construction period, private investment was coming in quickly because the impending end of the streetcar construction and the start of the streetcar meant private investment needed to get in here sooner than later so they could make sure they were in a good spot to take advantage of all the infill from new businesses, people feeling re-energized about downtown. So in that sense, downtown has changed dramatically in the last 24 months. I think the downtown changes has changed the demographics of downtown dramatically, because now you have people that are comfortable coming into downtown from Marana all the way to the east side, Houghton, Old Spanish Trail, obviously maybe even all the way up to the Catalina foothills. So it's a more eclectic mix of individuals. You definitely sense that there is a whole new landscape of guests that are coming downtown and feeling comfortable, because you just see it. I mean, it's pretty tangible. There wasn't enough to do. There wasn't enough great restaurants, not enough great bars. There was a perception of it was unsafe, homeless, crime, things of that nature. The other issue was the perception of lack of parking. So those factors were what really impacted why downtown wasn't as successful. I mean, in the last, again, 18 to 24 months, the end of the streetcar construction, the start of the streetcar, all of the private investment has totally impacted our business. We are extremely busy, doing much better than I'd anticipated. The growth has been pretty amazing. Very happy. So I think to have a historic building as downtown starts to develop and redevelop gives us an edge. As downtown redevelops, it's not redeveloping similar to maybe a Phoenix. The redevelopment has been done with a lot of emphasis on maintaining the historic preservation of buildings when possible. So it's been a real easy transition for us, because across the street, the Rialto has been redeveloped, renovated with historic authenticity kept in mind. That gentrification process in any revitalization, it's a tough situation for any developer, any municipality to be involved in, because you have to balance what's best for the long-term success of the city or the downtown with not losing sight of some of the short-term wins. And for me, it's sometimes there are going to be situations where that gentrification will have to force individuals into a different situation. But as long as it's been vetted and basically put through the ringers, so there's enough opinion and enough facts and enough history to make an educated decision, I don't think it's a bad thing. But I've seen it and know of firsthand issues. The Tucson Convention Center is a big example of some poor decisions from what I've been told back when they built it. But ultimately, it's the chicken and the egg. You're never going to win that battle. You have to do your diligence and do what's best for the region as a whole, or the city as a whole, not just a pocket of space that you want to redevelop because you see it as a profitable opportunity. I think sometimes we get sometimes in the way of progress because we have strong neighborhood associations, we have strong opinions and personalities. But I said it back in 2004 and 2005 when I was only here for basically a year and a half, 2 years. Once Tucson gets it done, it'll be done right, and it'll be done with long-term success.
My name is Austin Berry. I live on the south side of downtown, East 12th Street and 5th Avenue. I moved downtown because I wanted to be close to the bars, and I wanted to be close to kind of all the action that's downtown, while also living close enough to work. So it's about a 12-minute drive to work, but it's about a 5-minute walk to anywhere I want to. I have lived in Tucson about 7 months, starting about early April. Really enjoy living downtown. Tons of restaurants, tons of bars, tons of different stuff going on. In the basketball league at the YMCA, which is right down the street, a walking distance. There's different types of restaurants. There's your new school restaurants like Pizzeria Bianco and Hi-Fi and Playground and Hub, while there's your old school restaurants like La Cocina and El Charro. So there's kind of a new school, old school vibe that I think meshes really well. Construction that's going on downtown has not really affected my life. It's not really that hectic kind of where I live. It's typically kind of on the northern side of the city near the courthouse and the YMCA where it's going on, so I haven't really been affected by it too much. I think gentrification can be very cyclical. I think where for a very long time Tucson might have had maybe lower income housing, maybe not been as a desirable place to live downtown, builders and restaurant owners and people are going to see opportunity in that, and that's what they've kind of done here in downtown Tucson. They've kind of seen that opportunity. Everyone's kind of come together, and I think downtown is really happening at this point. But it's interesting because you see like over the restaurant row on Tanque Verde has now taken a hit, whereas 10, 15 years ago that was a hopping place. Downtown's kind of taken over, and now the restaurant row on Tanque Verde is kind of on the way down. It's very difficult to think about, you know, the people that are being pushed out. I think they had a good thing going for a very long time. I think their quality of life that they have is not necessarily diminished by living somewhere else. I think you can enjoy Tucson, and I think that where their downtown that they grew up living in is not where kind of in the path of where Tucson's headed. I think there's a decent overlap where it's on the rise and you can continue to live there, but ultimately at some point like cost of living will rise. It's difficult to think about, but you can't think about every single person. Just like take a presidential election for instance, like not 100% of people are going to be happy one way or the other. You have to kind of look at the greatest good for the people of Tucson. And I think the way downtown has kind of developed over the last couple of years ultimately affects the greatest amount of people that live in Tucson.